with that, we will get started. So this is, like Julie said, an introduction to TWL. This is an overview, perhaps a 15,000 foot view of it. So we'll be not getting into a lot of detail on it. We will have a couple, I'll show you a few of the basic functions, but mainly it's going to be conceptual and reasons why you would do TWL. So with that, we'll get into our agenda here. So why would you want to implement TWL or a WMS? And then we're going to talk about how TWL and CSD and SX work together. We'll go over some of the basics of TWL, the building blocks and what's required from the setup, and then we'll get into the requirements. What do I need hardware-wise to be able to run TWL? Like I said, we'll do a brief demo, and then I'll get into a little bit of the housekeeping. And I'm going to mention that probably a few times throughout the presentation, that there's some, in not housekeeping of the meeting, but housekeeping of TWL and making sure that you're staying on top of your exceptions and keeping an eye on the things that need to be kept up on. And going back to what Julie said in my point 2 here as well, and we will be showing this in Cloud Suite Distribution in our TRN environment, our demo environment. The way that TWL and CSD or SX work together largely isn't much different between SX61 GUI and CSD. So most of everything that I go through will be applicable to either or. So why implement TWL? The main reasons are more accurate receiving. Generally, in a distribution company, receiving's accuracy is pretty high. That's usually not a big source of inaccuracy, but it does help with the receiving accuracy. It definitely helps with the order picking accuracy. And when you have more accurate receiving and more accurate order picking, you are naturally going to have higher inventory accuracy. And then the other thing, and I kind of worded it like this: update it, you can update, well, you have to update bin locations real time. So for the people that are not using a WMS or TWL and have secondary and more than 2 bin locations even, and trying to do that manually through standard SX or CSD is difficult at best, if anyone's ever tried that. If you only have a product in one bin location, bin location 1 in ICSW, and you get 3 pallets in and you have to put it into overflow and you want to track those bin locations, somebody's got to write it down on the pre-receiver or the packing list. Then somebody's got to take and pull that up in ICSW or ICSEB or ICSWB for the additional bin locations and update it. Then if you pull one down to replenish primary, or you ship a full pallet out from one of the secondary locations, now somebody's got to make a note and go back to the screen and remove that bin location so that you have accurate data there. That is one of the main reasons people don't use a lot of the secondary bin locations, just because it is so difficult to keep those maintained. Well, with TWL, you have the gun with you at all times. Anything you do has to be tracked. So if you do a movement, boom, boom, it's done. The bin locations are updated. So Now you know where your inventory is at any point in time. There's also traceability. So if somebody did put that product over one aisle and you didn't want them to, and you have 4 people in receiving and it happened 3 weeks ago, nobody's going to remember. Now you can look it up in the transactions and see who actually did that. And so you can use that as a training opportunity. Along with that, and I didn't bullet point here, there is productivity reports. So you can see how many receipts Bob did today or how many lines Bob picked today. And some people don't use that information, but then again, some people have taken that to a whole new level, not just reported on it. They're pulling the data real time and putting screens up in their warehouse showing real time data to the warehousing crew, like how many lines did we receive today? How many putaways did we do? And then if you're running a second shift, they might have a board up there that says, we've got 400 picks to do tonight and we're done with 100 of them, so they can see how far along they are. So the data's there and you can do a lot with it if you choose to. Another, I think, important reason why you'd want to implement TWL is because it can be more efficient and higher productivity. So prior to a WMS, you're going to print your pick tickets, and then somebody's got to sort through them and say, okay, you're picking this truck, for example, if you have your own fleet for deliveries. And I might have 15 orders here. Now I've got to decide, all right, I can pull these 2 together. All right, I'm getting these. And then I have to look at it and decide which route I'm going to go, which products I'm going to go pick first. And it leaves a lot of interpretation, and a lot of your pickers are doing it slightly different if you go to ask them how they're actually managing that. And not only that, even on the receiving end, if you're doing it by paper, now you've got to write all this down, update a bin potentially, turn it into somebody. Now they've got to go in and do the receipt potentially if your receiving crew's not doing it. Even if they are, it's a second step. But now as you're counting it, checking it in, you're receiving it. As you're putting it away, you're putting it away. So it's a 1-step process instead of a 2-step process. And then back to the order picking process, it walks you through the picking process and tells you which, it serpentines through the warehouse and routes you through in a logical order. And you can do 1 order at a time, you can do multiple orders in a wave, and we'll talk about that in a little while too. So overall, more accuracy, traceability, and higher productivity. So how does TWL and SX or CSD work together? Well, when you implement TWL becomes the owner of the inventory counts and transactions. So anything that gets checked in, received, gets received in TWL. So now that inventory is in TWL because TWL has its own set of tables for inventory. It's actually the table name inventory, has its own item records. So TWL has the inventory. It needs to know everything that comes in and out. And then, so it owns it and it feeds that information up to CSD or SX. And if you want to look at some transactions, some of those will be visible in ICIP, but there's going to be much more detail in the transactional records in TWL. And so it does record everything, so you can see everything that went on with an item. CSD or SX remains the owner of the financial part of inventory still. So there's really not inventory cost, item cost in TWL. That remains in SX. So your GL is going to be written to from the SX CSD side. Your perpetual inventory or your subsidiary, basically quantity times cost, and that's your inventory value. That's all remains in CSD and SX. So because of that, it's important to have your inventory remain in sync between the TWL counts and what SX says it has, so that your financials are accurate and reflect reality. So, and also everything is still initiated in CSD. Sales orders are created there, purchase orders transfer, your kit production, value add are all initiated still in the CSD side. Then they're passed over to TWL for processing. So once CSD hands them off, TWL kind of owns that warehouse transfer. And then when it's shipped out, then it tells SX that, hey, this warehouse transfer now shipped. And then in your receiving warehouse, if that's TWL also, it's TWL kind of owns that transfer until it's received, completed, and then it passes that back up to SX and is received there. So that's kind of the interface on a high level and who owns what with TWL and CSD. So for the basics, so bin locations are fundamental in TWL. They're actually a table setup, unlike SX, where bin location 1 and 2 in ICSW are free-formed and they're not validated against anything. So I could put Bob's Desk as a bin location in ICSW. If I wanted to put product into a location called Bob's Desk in TWL, I have to set up the bin location Bob's Desk before I can put any inventory there. So it is an entity and it's fundamental. When you go to do a physical, you count every bin. And so every place that you have product, every bin location needs to be set up in the bin location table. And so if Bob's Desk is going to have product, we better have a bin called Bob's Desk. And that's the other fundamental thing about it is your inventory with TWL is tracked by bin product quantity. So if I have 3 skids of product and they're in 3 bins, or maybe I have 2.5 pallets of product, and let's say there's 60 on a pallet, and I have 30 here, what we would call maybe the primary pick, it knows I have 30 here, I have 60 in this aisle up on the 4th level, and the next aisle over, I have another 60 in the 3rd level up. So it tracks that. Now it knows I have 150 of this product, but not only that, it knows where those 150 are, 60 there, 60 there, and 30 here. And as such, like I mentioned earlier, anytime that you move a product, you pull that 60 down, you'll record that in TWL, inventory move, scan location, scan product quantity, scan new location. Now it just, as you physically move it, you record the move, and now your inventory remains accurate. And then you will receive a PO, and that inventory is now on the dock, unless you do a direct put away, but let's say we're not doing that. So that PO, once you close it and you've counted it and checked it in, that inventory knows it's on the dock. And then as a secondary process, you take that product and you go put it away. So receipt comes in, gets received, you put the product away, then you drop an order to a wave, and I'll explain what a wave is in a little bit, but you drop the order to a work assignment to be picked. You go pick that wave, and depending if you're pick to pack or pick to tote, you would pick the product to a tote or a carton, and if you're going to do secondary packing, then you pack the tote to a carton, then you ship the carton. So that's a very high level of your inventory as it moves through TWL. Gets received, gets put away, gets picked, gets packed, gets shipped. And each and every place along that path, you have your RF device and you are recording that. So it'll know that Julie received it to the dock and Bob put it away. Then we'll know that Julie dropped the order and Bob picked the wave, Julie packed it, and then Bob shipped it. And we'll have everything's date and time stamped. So it's very nice traceability there. All right, so shifting gears here a little bit, getting into a little more depth, because this is, to me, I guess this is interesting, and because once you send the order to TWL, that order will be in a printed stage in SX and CSD. All the while, it's going to go through 6 stages in TWL, all the while it's in a printed stage. So first of all, it's going to hit TWL. It's just called open. There's no wave. It's not assigned. Then it's going to be assigned or dropped to a wave. And then it's called assign. And as soon as I start picking it, it'll go to in pick. Then when I'm done picking it, it will go to a new stage called picked. Then when I'm done, I will pack that into the shipping cartons. Then it's in a pack stage. And then finally, once I ship that carton, it'll be in a ship stage. Then it will revert or update CSD into a ship status. So you get much more granular visibility into where that order is in the process with TWL. So I'm going to show you a little bit of this. We're going to do a receipt. We'll do a put away. We'll do some pick, packing, and shipping then. So with that, I'm going to use the older character-based RF devices. Some of you probably have heard there is an HTML web version for the RF devices. There's still some usability functionality that needs to be ironed out a little bit, in my opinion. So I'm going to go with this version. It's still probably the most widely used out there. So we'll start with that. So this is the main menu. And to kind of correlate with what we're going to be doing along the demo, we're going to do the receiving. That will be done under the receiving menu. Then we're going to put it away, which will be under material handling. And then we're going to go to order picking and pick it under number 5. Then we'll pack it with number 6, and then we'll ship it with number 7. So like I said, when you receive something, you receive it to a dock. Most people have, probably the majority only have one receiving dock, and they would call it dock 1 in most cases. So now I'm in, you can see I'm in dock 1. If you did have other receiving docks, you could actually designate those and track those. So I'm going to go right into receipt update number 2. And I don't remember the PO that I have to do this with. So I'm just going to hit enter. And there's all my inbound orders. And obviously, I don't have a lot in my demo environment, but if you had a transfer, you would see that in here, and it would start with a T. So with TWL, I really like this because anything inbound is treated as a receipt and is treated exactly the same. So what comes inbound? A standard PO, a warehouse transfer, and a customer return. So you could see, and in your environment, you probably would see POs that start with an O for your customer returns and T's for your transfers. And then the same is true on the outbound. Anything that is going out is a shipment, a standard order, a standard transfer, or a return to your vendor, a PORM. And I always like that because if I'm receiving a customer return, what do you have to do in Cloud Suite or SX? You have to ship it. Well, you're not shipping a return, you're receiving it. And so in TWL, you actually are receiving your customer return. So this is my demo PO that we'll receive. Back on the other screen, if I had a barcode on that PO on the packing list, I could have just scanned it. So here's where some of your efficiencies come from, as well as some of your accuracies. If I were to scan the barcode, and some of you may very well might have 50, 100 line POs, or maybe even more, and what happens with your receiving crew, if any of you have ever worked out in receiving, you get a packing list that's 4, 5, 6 pages, and they start receiving, and on the top there's 5 cases. Now I got to flip through this pre-receiver, and if it's not a very nice form, it can be troublesome to try to find that product on the packing list. Well, here you just scan the barcode right where the cursor is there under item, and it will find the product down on line 79 and just take you to it. I don't have a scanner hooked up to my computer, so I'm going to down arrow, which is another thing you can do. Even when you're on the gun, you can do that. You can scroll around and look at the descriptions and the vendor part numbers, so that could help you find the product. So I'm just using my arrow keys, the same thing you can do on the RF. So this is the one that was on top. I scan it. Now I'm in the receiving screen. So I got my purchase order number here at the top. I've got my item number, my description, and how many are ordered. So how many did they ship us? Well, I'm just working this pallet. I see 10 of them. And it's going to go to status. This is where you could receive it to unavailable if it was damaged. Enter by that. I'm going to scan my pallet ID. A lot of people in receiving have reusable pallets. So there would be a permanent pallet tag on it. Some people use carts, but they call them a pallet so they can receive small parts to that cart/pallet. And some don't reuse them, but they have a roll of pallet labels in their receiving area, and they'll slap a pallet label on there. So mine's going to be 2304-19-001, and I enter through that. Now I'm back to do my next one. And now you can see I have a little asterisk here, which means I already partially received it, and there's 10 left. I scan the next item, and I'm receiving the Swanstone double, and yep, they did ship us 6. There's a lot of configuration options in TWL. They're called system parameters. You might think of them as AO options. And I could have defaulted in my last pallet used, but why? I can just as easy scan it as I can hit enter on it. But I turn that off in my demo environment, so I do have to scan the pallet again. And I'm going to go ahead and put it on the same pallet. And now you can see I have 0 left of that one. And I'm just going to go through and do a couple more here. Yep, they shipped us 5. I'm going to put that on the same pallet. Oh, so this is a serialized item, and I have a flag turned on, which would come from, actually from CSD for serialized items, whether you want to track them on inbound, and obviously I have mine turned on to track on inbound. So now that I received 4 of them, I have to, or 5 of them, I have to give it 5 serial numbers. And the nice thing is, if they are barcoded, you can just go ahead and scan them. And then this one, and I'm going to say that they shipped everything here, but now that other pallet's full. I didn't tell the system it was full, I just know it. So now I'm going to scan my next pallet label, which is going to be 002. And then I got these, yep, there's 11 of those, and I'm putting that on the second pallet as well. And then I'm on the second pallet of the shipment, and here I find this product again. And how many do you have now? Well, I've got 10 over here. And somebody else could have been receiving the other pallet, which is kind of nice. You can split up and both be working on it. And now when I'm done with that, it says, oh, Julie received 10, Bob received 10, we ordered 20, now we have none left to receive. So I'm going to close the RT. I'm going to say yes to this. If I wasn't done on it, or Julie and I were both working on it, and I wasn't sure where she was, and she wasn't sure where I was, and she might be a different place in the warehouse, I might say no until I can talk to Julie, and then we can go close the RT. But I'm going to go ahead and close it. That's going to send the information up to CSD, and this PO will be received. Now that inventory is sitting on my dock, and let me show you a little bit of that. So if I go look at my inventory detail in my warehouse, and I look at location dock 1, there are the 5 line items that I received. And you can see there's 2 different pallets. And the reason that there's 6 here is because it has this item 10 on one pallet and 10 on the other. And this is where I was saying it tells you, it knows exactly who received it, when that was received, and we could go look at that transactions and I could show you that. But now I'm done receiving. Now I need to go put that away. So I'm going to back out and go into my material handling, stock put away. And I have 2 pallets on dock 1. So a client would have a label, if not multiple labels, in the receiving area with dock 1 barcoded. So I would just scan dock 1. My pallet already has a barcode on it. I scan the pallet, and now it's trying to figure out where everything goes. And I'm off to put them away. So now I don't have to put them into, I don't have to go in any particular order, right? It could walk you through it, but maybe this is a big tote or a pallet of product. I'm just going to go put away whatever's on top so I don't have to dig around it. So I would scan my part on the top, and it would go beep, and I would be here, and it's saying, put this in the carousel. So I would go over to the carousel, scan it. Am I putting all 6 in there? Yes. And here's another place that has a system parameter or an AO option. Do you want to tell the person putting it away that they put in away 6, or do you want them to count it again? And there's philosophies both ways, and we have clients doing it both ways. So it either default to 0 or 6. So in my case, I have it configured that they should find the 6 and know that they're getting 6. Now that I'm here, it is going to say, it didn't take me back out to scan the next product. It says, you're in the carousel, go ahead and put away the next thing in the carousel. And I'll put those 5 away. Now it says go to A1101B and put 10 of those away. There is also another AO option that I would have to scan the product again too, but I do have that turned off. So that is quite configurable about how you want it to function. Now that pallet's done, and then I can go do the other one. And that's real time. I updated my inventory detail screen, and you can see half the product went away. And I'm just going to fly through this real quick again. That one is going to A1101B, 10, 11, and the carousel bin location, and that one's now put away. And now my dock 1 is empty, which it should be at the end of the day. If, and that told you I was going to touch on housekeeping, this is one of the areas that I recommend that somebody looks at the end of the receiving put away shift. Your dock should be empty. If it's physically empty, the screen should be empty. If it's empty and you have product in here, then somebody forgot to actually scan it into location. So that's receiving put away. Now let's go pick, pack, and ship an order. So that is under TWL outbound, and in GUI it was just called order manager. In CSD it's called order drop manager. So here are all the orders that need to be assigned for picking. And again, you could have transfers in here and you could have purchase order returns in here. This is the one that I'm going to want to pick. So you can have the orders as soon as they hit drop to a wave one by one. And it's called auto drop. So a fair amount of people do use auto dropping, and a fair amount of people use order drop manager. So one of the nice things about order drop manager and why they call it a wave is I could highlight all these and drop them in one wave. So let's say they're 4 smaller orders and I can pick them all on a pallet or on a cart or into a tote. I go one time through the warehouse in one wave through the warehouse, and I pick all the product for these 4 orders. So that is another place that you can gain efficiencies. And if you're not using a WMS, your order selectors may be doing this anyway. And probably the more experienced ones have a method to do that manually. But this will just make it more efficient and help them doing that. So I'm going to drop my one demo order here into a wave, and it was successful. And it gave me wave 506. And I forgot to show you. I'm going to go back and do that now. Look at my wave 506. And I'm going to go into TWL order inquiry. So I remember I was telling you the stages. And before I dropped it, it would have been open, undropped, or not assigned for pick. Now that I dropped it, it's still in an open status, but now it's assigned for picking and it has a wave number. Before that, the wave would have been 0. So now I'm going to go to order picking. I'm going to pick by wave. and I don't need to sort it. Now, if I knew the wave number, I could type it, or again, I can go look at all waves, and this is the only one out there. Some people do that. You know, they might have auto drop on, and I'm just going to take my first wave. I'm going to go pick it. Julie goes in, she's done with her wave. She picks the next one, and you could have your whole crew just picking waves and going off the top of them and just selecting those. And there is a thing called zones. People use them for different reasons, but you could also do zone picking if that is your environment. I'm going to pick this across all zones. I think I put all my locations in one zone anyway. So here, it's going to start you at the beginning and then walk you through the picks. So in the picking scenario, you have my location at the top, the item number, item description, order number, and how many I'm expecting. I expect to pick 3 of these. So as an order selector, I go to A1101B, scan it, beep, scan the product, beep, how many did you pick? This I have to type. There is a newer feature that came out probably within the last year on the HTML version where it's called Quick Scan, I believe, where I could just scan the product 3 times and it counts for me as I'm picking it. So I wouldn't even have to enter a quantity. And because I'm picked a tote, I'm going to pick this into a tote. So I'm going to name my tote the same thing as I did my pallets. And then I'm done with that pick. I drive over, walk over to A1, A05, scan it, scan my product, beep, how many? And the same thing here, I could have the system set up so that it automatically remembered my tote number. But again, I just scan that. So I scan the location, scan the item, enter the quantity, scan the tote. It really is quicker than I'm explaining it. Scan, scan, 6, scan. And this was the last item, I believe. Yep, I'm finished. There's no more zones. Oh, and I forgot to show you again that it would have said in pick. But now that I'm done, you can see the status is picked. And here's the transactions. A little bit of, you can see the transactional history on this. The order went to InPick by RAC. The order was dropped. That's my RF user. This is my CSD user. So I dropped it. I accessed it for picking. It went in pick. I picked in these items from the location and the date and time that I did that. So like I said, it's got quite detailed history on it. So now I'm simulating, I have these items in a tote, I'm done, I'm taking it to the shipping lane, and somebody's gonna take it out of a tote and put them into cartons that we're gonna ship out UPS, so they're gonna box it up next. So I'm gonna go to packing, and so now I'm in the packing station. I've got my tote sitting there. Oh, this is the box I'm gonna use. I have a reel of carton labels. I take one off, put it on the box. And where are you getting this from? I'm getting it from my April 19th tote. All right, which product are you doing? So they might have, they might be working on this on a terminal through an emulator like this, and they might have a little wedge reader, or they could be doing it on an RF device. I've seen it both ways. And I would just scan my part number. I could also go up into that grid and select it, but I'm just going to simulate scanning it. Okay, you have 3 of them. How many are going to fit in here? Yep, I'm going to put 3 in there. Okay, what else are you going to put in there? Yep, I don't remember that part number, so I am going to go up into the grid and select it. And I'm going to put 4 in there. It tells me there's already 3 in the carton. Okay, that carton's full. I can't put any more product in there. So now I got to go pick another carton. And which tote are you getting out of? Scan the tote, scan the item as I'm grabbing it out of there. And then grab my last item, put 6 in there. So now the tote is empty. You want to close the carton? Yes, I'm done. And so now if we look at my order, it's now in the pack stage. Now, if you were running a large parcel shipping operation, you might have a shipping integration solution like Starship or Digital Shipper or one of those solutions, in which case you would run it through your shipping solution. And they would scan the carton in those solutions and it would know the order, the destination and all that, and end up shipping it in TWL, which would in turn ship it in SX or Cloud Suite. But I'm going to do that manually, whether I'm shipping it like emulating shipping it LTL or on my truck, or I'm even could be doing this for UPS. So I'm going to go under shipping and I'm going to ship verify this. So what dock am I shipping it to? So again, whether I had an LTL truck pulled up to dock 7 or my own truck in dock 6, I have to tell it what dock I'm shipping. And I actually made a dock for UPS ground here. What's my carton I'm shipping? So I'd scan the carton. I'm going to do O2 first. Now I'm going to stop and pause here. It's still in the pack stage. Well, I shipped it. Now I shipped one of the 2 cartons. So now I got to ship the other carton. Now if I look at my order, now it's shipped and it will be shipped in CSD and SX likewise. So that's a quick overview of pick, pack, ship and a little bit of receiving and put away. So what do you need to implement TWL? Well, you're going to need some Wi-Fi coverage in your warehouse. If you don't already have that, there's companies that do this type of work. They'll come out and do what's called a site survey, and they'll have some of their RF Wi-Fi equipment, and they'll determine where you need access points and layer those in for your warehouse. You do need the mobile devices. You know, a lot of people will use Zebra, the old Symbol products, Intermec, any of those devices will work. But just be aware that right now they're experiencing long lead times. I'm talking like 3 to 4 months for you to get those devices in. We can help you get them, or we can kind of recommend some and you can go through your own sources to get those. But you will want some label printers. You know, thermal transfers are great. And they even have mobile ones for certain applications where you don't want to have to go back to the desk. You're out in the middle of the warehouse and you need a label. They have, some people refer to them as hip printers or mobile printers that you can take out there with you, but you're going to want to be able to print labels. Your bin locations are going to need to be barcoded. And then you need barcoded products. You know, nowadays, most distributors are dealing with products that come in with barcodes, but some products still don't have barcodes, and you can work around that, or during receiving, you can print. I didn't show you that, but on the receiving screen, there's an option to print labels, and has a very nice TWL receiving label. It has the part number barcoded, description, what PO it came on, who received it, when they received it. And so a lot of people will do that for products that come in that aren't barcodes, so that as you're moving it around and picking it, you can just scan it. So those are really the base requirements, but I added that it's really, really helpful if you already have strong processes and procedures in place in your warehouse. If your warehouse is a mess and you're just going to say, hey, we're going to go implement a WMS and that's going to solve all our problems, I hate to break it to you, but if you can't follow processes and have some procedures in place without TWL, it's not going to work so good implementing a WMS. And I'll leave it at that. Along with that, you do need some digital or diligent housekeeping. And what I mean by that is, like I mentioned earlier, there's 2 sets of inventory now, and you need to keep those in sync. You need to make sure that the POs got put away, that before receiving left, there's no active POs, that somebody forgot to close it because Bob and Julie are both receiving it and they never touch base that who's going to close it. Well, now that inventory is not received in SX, it's not allocating to your orders, and they're not going out tonight. So again, that's part of the strong processes and procedures. You need to, again, make sure that a day's work gets done in a day, that there's no errors in the communication back and forth between TWL, that order didn't ship because it's on credit hold. So there's a number of things, there's maybe 5 things that you really need to keep an eye on and make sure everything's working and everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's pretty important to do those as well. So here are some of the housekeeping things. So the balancing report, again, that checks the inventory in TWL and the inventory in SX in comparison, make sure they're in balance. Should be running that daily and looking at it and dealing with any issues that might arise because of that. And I'm not going to get into some of the reasons why that might happen. So Willet errors. That is, Willet is the screen in SX CSD that keeps track of the documents going back and forth between TWL and SX. And there can be errors from time to time that you need to deal with and clean that up. So that should be checked daily, perhaps a couple times during the day. Another thing that TWL is really good at is cycle counting. Real time, you're keeping up on that. A lot of people, when they implement a WMS, will go from a physical count once a year to cycle counting daily. And most accounting companies and CFOs are fine with cycle counting as long as you stay up on top of it. There's inventory discrepancies can pop up in TWL. That kind of rolls into the cycle counting, but you need to be looking at those. And like I said, making sure that a day's work gets done in a day, that all your packed orders got shipped, unless there's a reason why, you would know that. There's no active receipts and there's no pending putaways, that everything got done, and then your warehouse should be running top notch there. So those are very important things as well. And with that, we can have a little time to field a few questions if anybody has any. I think Julie mentioned that you can type those into the chat, and Julie will be fielding any questions that you might have.
Right. Good job, Bob. You answered a lot of the burning questions in people's minds. I see nothing right now, but we'll give it a minute. We do offer consulting services at Central Data for TWL implementations and for use after the fact. So if you're considering a TWL project, please get in touch with us and we will connect you with the right person to have a discussion about what you need and what training you need and what we would recommend. Give it just a minute here, Bob.
Sure.
Okay. I'm checking the chat as well as the questions area. And right now we have none. If you have a question after the fact, feel free to email us. We have a support line, a support email, support@centraldata.com. You can send questions there and we'll field them from there. And we will be sending out a recording of this session today. And again, please join us next month. May 17th is the next webinar for AP freight allocations and PO add-ons. Thank you very much, Bob. Thanks, everybody. I'll stop the meeting for today.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay, have a good day.